This is Rob Zach from What Culture, and I'm talking to C.J. Kershner, who's the Senior Narrative Designer on Homefront: The Revolution. So C.J., could you just elaborate on what exactly a Senior Narrative Designer does on Homefront?
So a Senior Narrative Designer, as with any narrative designer, is the steward of the player's narrative experience of the game. We work with all of the other departments, art, tech, AI, audio, to really create that experience of being a guerrilla fighter in an occupied America, and to make sure that all of it makes sense, all of it feels right. It's sort of a strange, squishy, intangible kind of day-to-day role. But I also am an overseer for the backstory and the lore surrounding the game. So we're not talking too much about the backstory yet, but we'll have a lot more in the coming weeks about how North Korea arrived in the United States and what that occupation has entailed over the past, really almost 100, no, that's way too much, 80 years of our alternate history timeline.
I tend to find that in a lot of modern / near futuristic shooters, the story takes a bit of a passive role in relation to the action of the game. I found that, I think Gears of War may be an exception. A lot of these games tend to not engage me too much on a storyline level, and I think a lot of people may feel the same way. How will Homefront: The Revolution kind of move away from that?
Well, I think the engaging thing is our gameplay, and the moment-to-moment gameplay is really your story. You, as the player, are crafting an experience out of all of the ingredients that we've provided for you, whether that's the combat encounters that you'll run into and the tools that you have at your disposal, whether that is the environments that you are running through. One of the nice things about being an open-world game is we have the main campaign. It's a high-impact cinematic experience that I think players expect from a game of this caliber, and that will carry them through their role in the occupation and the resistance is growing to prominence. But we also have lots of side content, and we have all of these little, almost micro stories that are told through the environmental art and through the NPC dialogue in the world. And by making the game open world, we really gained so many new avenues to tell smaller stories rather than just the one big one.
So can you give an example of kind of one of these smaller stories that you encounter throughout the game? Absolutely.
And it's one that I love to cite as an example, because it's one that I think sets Homefront apart from other shooters. And it's really all in the player's imagination. It's a piece of environmental narrative, but part of our occupation fantasy is resource scarcity, and how do people live for extended periods of time without the modern conveniences that we take for granted today. And you start to see things in our yellow zones like rainwater collection or backyard farming, and all of those little environmental props that are placed there by our artists and level designers come together to form a picture of what life is like under this occupation. And it's something that doesn't require words, but when you look at it, you recognize it as that little tableau, and you start to build again a story in your head about who's using this stuff and what their life must be like.
So the bit of the demo that we played, I don't think we were in a yellow zone there. It felt pretty red where we were.
It was a red zone, yes.
Yeah, it seemed that we didn't, I suppose, get in touch with too many of those kind of intimate story elements. So I suppose there will be sections of the game where you're not just trying to survive and fight for your life. There'll be sections of the game where you're just kind of wandering around among these people. Will you be able to just interact with people around the town? Do you kind of get quests from people or buy and sell things from them?
So as you pointed out, yes, this is a red zone. This is where we are showcasing sort of the combat sandbox of using your guerrilla toolkit items and the frenetic combat and the waves of increasingly difficult reinforcements that really cause players to feel like a guerrilla fighter, make them put them on the back foot all of the time, and every encounter that you survive feels like it happens by the skin of your teeth. The yellow zones are a much less combat-heavy affair. It's a bit more about social stealth. So rather than hit-and-run style missions, you have cat and mouse, chase missions, or there's no need for surveillance in a bombed-out sort of war zone like the red zone. War zone like the red zone. It's a mouthful. There's no need for security cameras there because, as you observe, there are no people that are living there. But again, in the yellow zones, there's security on every street corner and propaganda broadcasts that are playing constantly. You will interact with people. You will visit their shops. You will conduct missions that are both given by them and in their neighborhoods. So you have to figure out how to accomplish those objectives without drawing your weapon. Sometimes in the yellow zone, if you were to draw a gun in public, everybody in that immediate area would just scatter in fear because, one, guy has just drawn a gun. Two, gun means that he's with the resistance. Three, resistance means that the occupational police are going to come here and they're going to crack down on all of us. So we don't want to be associated with you right now. But through the player's actions, they'll begin to fear you a bit less, and then they'll become a bit more civilly disobedient. And eventually the goal is to get everybody to rise up and join with you.
CJ, thank you for your time.
Well, thanks for coming.
So Homefront: The Revolution is coming out in spring 2016. Stay tuned.